Good morning and welcome. Today is Saturday, August 5th, 2023. And I am Magali Angeloni from New England Institute of Technology, the Masters of Public Health. I am very happy to have you here today. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us after completing the program. And for our students and others who haven't met, we have 3 MPH graduates here who are going to talk to us about their experiences and challenges and successes when they were doing the portfolio and the capstone project, which is the major parts of the program before you graduate. So we have Jennifer Ricci, Lauren Chapman, and Kat Denault Federzani now, right? Correct, thank you. So we are going to get started and we are going to let each one of our panelists to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about themselves, then when they graduated, what they are doing now, and then we will start with the questions. So it's my pleasure to have you here. Thanks again for allowing your time to talk to us. So whoever wants to start.
I can go. Thank you, Magali. My name is Jen Ritchie. I graduated from New England Tech in 2021. So it's been actually just about 2 years. And I currently work at the Rhode Island Department of Health in their academic institute, and I manage their internship program. So if there's any students who are looking for an internship, feel free to contact me at the Department of Health.
I'll go next. My name is Catherine Denault Pederzani now. I graduated from New England Tech, the MPH program in 2020, in the middle of COVID, the beginning of COVID. And I am currently a mental health counselor at Lawrence Memorial Hospital. And yeah, that's about it.
I'm Lauren Chapman. I graduated the same time as Jennifer in September of 2021. I'm currently a SAMHSA grant program coordinator at Gateway Healthcare in Charlestown. That's wrapping up, as well as an operations manager for an MMA gym in Wakefield, Rhode Island.
Thank you, ladies. So the first question that I am going to pose to you, and you should feel free to, answer it in going to whatever direction that you think it's important to you to share, is what is the tool or experience or practice that was the most helpful to you to succeed in the preparation of the portfolio? We're going to talk about the portfolio first, the same questions, and then we will talk about the capstone, just to make sure that the students have, the conversation about the portfolio, and then we talk about the capstone, and then we can mix both of them. So.
Well, the first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question was a lot of the projects leading up to the portfolio and the capstone, but we got to choose what we were interested in along the way the whole time. And in my case, I kind of chose similar topics the whole time, so that kind of all pieced together at the end when I was putting my portfolio together. It kind of was a big puzzle that I'd been working on the whole time, and it kind of just fell together. So we learned about different dimensions the whole time, and getting to put that all together at the very end, it kind of just made sense when I was presenting, and it was something I knew I was working towards the entire 2 years I had put into this degree. And being able to choose what I wanted to focus on helped me stay on track with being able to stay interested and stay targeting what I knew I was going to do after I graduated, and be able to use that, applying for jobs and presenting it was, I was able to say, hey, I've been focusing on this topic the whole entire time, so I kind of know what I'm talking about here when I was wrapping up the portfolio. So I guess it's not just one thing, it was just multiple things, but being able to choose our own topics and learning about them the whole way, being able to do our own research and look up things using the online library kind of, it really did help. So I guess I would say the online library because I was able to look that all up.
I can go next. I actually had a very similar plan as Kat going in. I had kind of been picking similar topics around chronic disease, exploring the different areas in that. And then COVID happened in 2020. I was in the middle of my degree, and I I was essentially moved from my current work at Rido to the COVID response, and so my entire world was COVID. And so I quickly learned that I needed to switch gears a little bit because my brain was working in different areas than what I had been planning to do. And so I kind of switched gears to focus on some COVID related things, or, so that I was I was going from work to school there. Everything was back to back. So it was really easy for me to kind of focus on a topic I was already working on in my career professional life. And then I would say the other thing that really helped me was leveraging my existing relationships in terms of finding projects that made sense. There's a lot more people out there than you think in terms of like who you've met before and what you could possibly help them with. I know there's a lot of colleges and universities that are looking for interns to help with their like healthcare related programs. There's so many different places you can kind of reach out to. And I think starting with your school and your college and seeing what needs to happen there, what projects are available, that might be the best place to start.
I think the most useful thing that I had with portfolio was getting to talk with Magali and go through like what Kat said throughout the progress like of the degree. We all know this is what's coming, and if you start early you kind of get like a leg up. But I thought it was really nice that like Magali meeting with me one-on-one, like I know she offers and does with everyone, but being able to say this is what I'm interested in. Like I knew I liked research and like epidemiology, so we figured out ways to make it work and also troubleshoot different things based on like the area I focused on for portfolio that tied into capstone. So I thought that was probably the most helpful experience because it made me feel like not only really supported, but also I got that specialized ability to be like, this is what I'm interested in, like in the public health field, this is what I want to focus on. And it kind of merged into one. And I felt like that was kind of helpful in being successful.
So on the other hand, what were the challenges that you think that that you had to face when you were working on the portfolio? And and how did you, if you had to do it again, what would you do? What would you change?
Well, I was gonna say, I guess this isn't necessarily more for me because, like I said, I kind of knew what I wanted to do the whole time, but I had heard a couple people kind of stress because they weren't sure what their end topic was going to be. And I know I kind of changed mine really close to the end. I don't know if you remember that, Magali. I changed mine like within weeks and I like redid that because I realized it was still similar, but I guess I was going to say I think some people kind of needed to do more of, I don't know how I would word this, some kind of like deeper thinking about what they were going to do at the end, because I feel like I hear a lot of people say, I don't know what I'm going to do my capstone or my portfolio on, and I'm not sure like what kind of projects to do. And even though um even though a lot of that was told to us at the beginning, I feel like a lot of people didn't, when it came time to choosing your portfolio projects and when it came time to choosing your exact capstone, people were, still stressed out about what to do. And I mean, I was a little stressed about my portfolio topics, but it's master's degree, you're gonna get a little stressed about those, I guess. But I figured it out, but I think that was something that was probably the most stressful. And I don't really know how to really choose that from the beginning when you're still kind of learning along the way what's important and what's going to mean something to you and what's going to like hit that interest button when you're learning about it, because there's so much that I learned along the way that I was learning about, and I was like, well, probably could talk about this, and I could probably go into this too. But I if I could redo it over again, oh my gosh, I don't know. I guess I would probably I would do I well recommend internships with where you want to work. A lot of people were still doing what internships or like portfolio projects where they were working, which is very helpful, but maybe not necessarily helpful if you're trying to grow out and go somewhere else. So some people are just staying where they are, and they planned on doing that and using their degree. But if you're trying to like grow and move out, I would say get out of your comfort zone and just kind of hustle for that time frame.
Yeah, I agree with the time frame, and I think thinking about it sooner is also hard to do, even though you should. I think I wish I had thought about things sooner. I believe the program's changed a little bit, so you might actually think about it sooner. You might be forced to think about it sooner. I think the other thing for me was that, not everyone was getting their degree at the time I was. So like we were in the middle of COVID. And I think something that I wish I had done was like picked projects and agreed to do projects that fit with my schedule. I think that I was looking for anything because of how crazy the world is. And I wish I had started looking sooner so that I could choose and had control over the end product and how I was going to complete them. I think that I needed projects that were, I could complete on my own independently outside of my work and school hours. And I think I did that for the most part, but I do wish that I had done that for all three of the projects I worked on.
I think the one thing that I would have changed is one thing that Magali and I did end up changing like at the last minute, because it would have delayed me in graduating and moving onwards. We had the 3 projects I did, and they were all kind of multifaceted, except for one. It wasn't just like, I'm gonna do this one thing for this one preceptor, and that's that. It was multi-step for 2 out of the 3 projects, and the one that wasn't, the preceptor and I just did not click. So I wish maybe we could have worked on facilitating that relationship a little bit earlier, a little bit better. That would be the one thing I wish I could have changed, like looking back now, or we had realistically like looked back, like when we had all 3 options, been like, okay, this one can count for one thing. And then like the end product of, okay, you're doing a major statistical analysis with the research paper on the results. Like I wish we kind of had thought through that a little bit earlier, because then I wouldn't have been working on 3 projects to have one kind of get not flushed out, but put to the back burner and not really completed. So that's the one thing I wish I would have changed, is we looked at things a little bit more quickly, because it was crazy times with COVID. So.
And what was the challenge, Lauren, the challenge that you faced when doing the portfolio?
I was in the middle of a move, working full-time with the program. The main challenge was basically, even though I started super early, or as early as I feasibly could. It was just time management at points. Like I didn't have internet when I moved into my current place. So my old boss was very, very gracious and let me stay late at their shop with internet to work on things. So I think maybe a little bit of time management, but that wasn't it. To me, it wasn't that challenging. It was more just the challenge of one preceptor just and I not really vibing well together, I guess we could say. Like we just did not always see things on the same wavelength or agree on the same thing. So that was, I think, the biggest challenge for one of them. The other two preceptors I had, they were very pleased. I was able to talk and communicate with them easily. And they were happy with the work I did. So yeah.
Thank you. So this is a question that I didn't include before for you guys to think about, but I know that this is important. Comment a little bit on the process and how you identify the preceptors for your portfolio. How did you feel about that process, how that went, and and what other thoughts or suggestions do you have for the current students on that level?
So for my experience, I had the ability to like use a preceptor for the job that I was working at. And luckily, it was my boss at the hospital who wanted to do kind of some research anyways. And we had kind of worked together to make that happen. And then I went through you, Magali, to find an internship, what was called Student Scholar at the Department of Health, and kind of worked with Dr. McDonald, and we worked on a policy building for the state. So that was kind of hand in hand with what I had said, doing something with where I was currently working. So it was kind of going hand in hand with my full-time job that I was already working, and then the internship / student scholar. But that was also online. So I was able to ask you, Magali, where I could make that happen. And I told you my interest, and you were able to give me good direction. So that was extremely helpful. And like I said, the job that I was currently working at, it worked out. I was able to meet with my boss, and we were able to make that happen. So that worked out.
One clarification I would like to make for people who don't know it is that Kat has the background in psychology. So, her projects and what she was doing, it was more related to that. So she did the mental health and then the marijuana policy that was at the time something that she was very interested. And I believe that, Kat, you were the only student who was able to actually go in person to your preceptor because of your schedule. Then you were able to go to the Department of Health and work with Dr. McDonald. That was very unique because not everybody has the schedule and the ability to do that. So just clarification for how it worked for Kat.
I can go next. So I was in a similar situation. I went through a bunch of different contacts I had at the Department of Health. Because I was working in COVID, I knew a lot more people than I had known when I first started. I had only been at the department 5 months, I think, before I was moved to the COVID unit. And I knew that there were projects that existed outside of COVID that still were happening. And there were programs who were really struggling because, everyone was basically just stripped down to bare bones. Like every program had like very minimal people working in it because of how intense the COVID response was. And so I knew there were programs struggling. And so I went to those programs who I knew, maybe only had one staff person working in their area just because they had to give up like 5 of their staff members to work for COVID. We were really strict we were brought down to the very minimal like essentials that are needed to provide basic public health service to our communities. And so obviously everyone was really focused on COVID, but we still had to make all these other programs keep running and keep working. We had grant deliverables to still hit, even though the world was kind of falling apart. And I think knowing that and kind of having an idea of where there were pain points in the department, I think that really helped me because I knew what my target was. I knew where I was going, and I knew people probably would say yes because I knew they needed help. And I know it's not that situation is very specific. No, I don't know if anyone is gonna live through a pandemic going and getting their MPH, at least maybe not in this lifetime. So it is a very specific experience I went through, but I do still think it's valuable because I think if you pay attention maybe, or like if you know things that are going on around you but aren't necessarily part of your work, I think being able to leverage those and being able to offer support for those programs, plus you learn more, like Kat said, like you're gaining experience in other areas. You're still kind of staying where you are comfortable and you're working every day, but I was able to branch out and talk to people and learn different topics that I didn't necessarily think I was going to learn about or even work on anything related to it. So I totally went in different directions than what I was planning, but it was because I kind of had to.
Magali, could you just repeat the question, please?
I asked about to comment on the process for you to identify your preceptors.
Okay.
And how did that go? What would you recommend other students to do, or your thoughts on that?
So I got lucky with 1/2 of my preceptors because it was my boss and our piercer for where I used to work at a tattoo shop. We really needed training manuals and agreement forms for all of our apprentices on top of the state mandated paperwork from Department of Health. So that one, I was like, hi, would you guys be interested in me making this for you guys? It keeps our apprentices accountable. It's stayed in place since, and it kind of helps us field out our apprentice process or their apprentice process at this point. So that was a good thing. I looked with there and got really lucky. Like with the portfolio projects, I knew kind of what I was interested in, and Magali helped connect and find people. I think we had Dr. Rosenthal, who used to teach statistics and epidemiology. She was one of the preceptors for the big statistical research part and the paper, because that went out to the Latinx project, I want to say, up at for New England. That's where it ended up going to. And then there was someone at the Rhode Island Public Health Association that Magali connected to. So I think it was a lot of help that I'm grateful for, of Magali helping with the contacts, since I'm not in the public health field and my job field changed as a result of COVID. So all my contacts were in Connecticut and then switched back to square one, basically, and very different. So
thank you. That is very helpful. So any other thoughts that come to mind about the portfolio specifically, so then we can move to the capstone? No? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the capstone then. All right, so just a brief question. What was in your mind more challenging or more stressful, the portfolio or the capstone?
Mine is the capstone for me.
They were so different, I think. I actually think mine was the portfolio. I mean, I like writing papers, so I'm like very different. I think a lot of people had more stress with the capstone, so I liked writing. But the portfolio was kind of like 3 different things that I had to be juggling at once, and then putting it all together and making that organized and making that work, where like to me the capstone was like just write about it and do it, put it together and then present it. But
I thought it was kind of capstone because mine just was very different and wasn't well researched and written about. So it was a little challenging at times, but it made me get creative with stuff. And I'm like Kat, I like writing the research papers and organizing it and making it make sense. So that part was fun, but it was more just that I really wish I had done a little bit more research prior to starting of like, what's out there, what's not, how creative am I going to have to get? So.
And did you answer that question, Jen?
I answered very quickly in the beginning that it was the capstone.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going senile here, so I am not sure if you already remember, if you already answered it. Okay, so what was the most helpful? So think about a little bit of the process for you to identify the capstone. What was the most helpful part of it to make it successful?
I found that going to see Steve and George present a year before me really helped me. So I watched how they did it. I looked at their topics. I asked you to send me their slideshows and their, what they presented on, so that I was kind of able to think about. I saw them like 6 months to a year before I was going to be presenting mine. And I think it was 6 months. And it really kind of like threw on the, okay, I got to start thinking about this because I'm going to have to do that and I'm going to have to be there. So doing that and then kind of seeing like what they presented in their PowerPoints. And I was kind of thinking, like that's how I want to look when I'm up there, or I don't want mine to look like that when I'm up there. And like that really caught my attention, the way they like put these pictures in and talked about that. So that was something huge for me, was kind of like looking at someone else doing it and then kind of saying, okay, like this is how I need to get moving in order to get myself in that position in 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I think for me, the first change I made, I would say, when I realized I needed to start working on the capstone, was that I needed to pick something a topic that I was familiar with. As I mentioned before, that I had always planned on doing something related to chronic diseases, diabetes. I had done all of my work previously on, my research papers, my different analysis reports, whatever. I had done it on multiple different types of chronic diseases, and I figured I'll pick one and focus on it. And then I was thrown into COVID, and I realized I didn't know anything about just emergency response, emergency preparedness, like any of that. And I was like, well, I've been working on this for a year. I don't know anything about it. Let me just, my brain is already kind of in COVID mode. Like, let me learn more about this. And I had the contacts because I was working with the emergency preparedness team. So I was able to leverage those relationships, which I was really lucky to be able to do. And I was able to, without switching gears too much from between work and school, I was able to, get my work done and then, leave work, switch to my school brain. And I was doing something very different than what I was doing on the COVID unit, but I also was still thinking about COVID and still thinking about a pandemic and how it affects people. And so I think switching gears, resetting my expectations, because I really had been gunning for like doing something on chronic diseases. And I think making the choice to switch to a different topic, even though I had this plan in my head since I started. And Kat, it's awesome to hear that you're like, that's how you also were planning to get to your capstone. And it worked. I thought it was going to work for me. And I think sometimes things happen, things pop up, even if it's not a pandemic. We all have crazy lives we're living. And I think being able to make a decision to completely change your topic and reset your expectations, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think having the awareness to like step back and allow yourself that change, or allow yourself to really think about what's going to be best for you moving forward. I think it's okay to make that decision for yourself. And it sounds like Kat and Lauren, it sounds like you guys even made changes super close to, the end of your capstone. And I think that too is okay. I think it's okay to kind of, you start a project, you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know where it's going to lead you. Sorry. And I think rolling with the punches is like the best way to do it, honestly.
I think if I'm remembering right, in like early 2020, there was a panel at New England Tech, like way before COVID, like 1 or 2 months before COVID hit, where there was a panel of students that had completed their capstone and portfolio, or were like in the midst of it, and getting to hear like what they recommended and what their experience was like, as well as I think in September of 2020, when COVID things started lightening up, when Kat and I got to meet with, I think, Sarah, and I can't remember if there was anyone else at the dinner, but we were able to like kind of like field questions and find out what the experience was like, what they recommended. The biggest thing was time management and making sure you're really, really interested in that topic, because that topic is going to consume you for like a good amount of time. That was really helpful to have and be able to hear from not just like the administrative and like program side, but also from the people that went through your experience or like what you're going to be experiencing. I found that really helpful. That's why I'm happy to be here this morning to help for other people. Time management really, really helps. So that was really helpful in my thoughts. And that was like the most helpful thing from like this, like people that have gone through it side. I also kind of think knowing that if we had questions, if we had concerns, how quick like Magali would answer, how fast whoever was helping with the reviewing of the paper of like, does this make sense? Am I like really that overtired, or does this make sense? Like that helped bring back the confidence at points, because at some points it is kind of just like, I don't know if I'm exhausted with the 2 classes plus work, everything. I had a little bit of doubt at times where I was like, I don't feel that confident in this. Or I was afraid it wasn't going to pass. So having the prompt response and getting feedback and support and making the right edits was really helpful too from the program side.
So those were the helpful things, the positive side of the experience with the capstone. So let's talk about challenges. What was the hardest part of the capstone? And if you had to do it again, what would you change? If there's anything that you would change in the way that you did it, or anything else?
For me, it was trying to figure out what to pull from my final project to present on. There's so much information that was just put into that final project, and now you don't want to bore people with how long it could take you to present that whole project, and you want to stick to what's important and what your point is, what's your goal. what's the background, and you want to make it fun and interesting, and you want it to be as important to everybody listening as it is to you. So for me, it was really hard to kind of like sit down and think and organize and try to figure out like how to do that, especially because when you're writing the paper, everything seems important. You have to put every single detail in there because it all does wrap together. But then going and pulling just small details, because you want to put so much in there, and you want your presentation to be like 4 hours long, but it can't be 4 hours long. It has to be like a couple minutes long. You have to stick to the topics. So to me, it was really difficult because you pour your heart and soul into that, and there's so much that you want to include, but you have to take like 90% of it out for the presenting part, and kind of figure out and memorize what you're going to say, and be able to have the answers to all the questions people are going to ask you, but you don't want to have too many questions because you want to have it all covered already. So basically, like, the pressure and stress of knowing everything, and then making sure you have enough information for that presentation, I think was very challenging, but something that I think I would do if I were to do it again. I I started kind of late. I made like flashcards for my slides for the presentation of the capstone to help me memorize what to say for each slide, so I wouldn't have to like look down or like look at my slides. And my goal was not to have words on my slide except for like the title. So that's my recommendation, and I kind of memorized what I was going to say on each slide by writing on the background of the note cards what I was going to say, and practice in front of people, because people are going to ask you questions when you're practicing, and they're going to ask you things that you didn't think of. And it's really good to have people ask you questions before you're actually going to present, because when they ask you those things, you're going to say, oh, I didn't think that people were going to ask me that, and I forgot to kind of cover that background. And it really does prepare you. And practicing will help kind of knock down that nervous wall a little bit, and it will help other people get excited for you too. So definitely practice and prepare as much in advance as possible.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of one thing that it just came to my mind as Kat was talking was, when you are practicing, also time yourself and make sure you are, because you will talk forever because you just wrote a 30-page paper or whatever on this amazing topic that you are interested in. So definitely time yourself. But my main challenge, I would say, was I love writing. I like to think that I'm good at writing, but I am not good at organizing my thoughts, and I'm not great at I know everything I want to say, but it feels like a very overwhelming thing, right? Because I know I have to write like 20 plus pages probably. And I think what I wish I had done is not force myself to start from the beginning. And what I mean by that is like forcing myself to do like the intro and background and like writing it in order, and I don't know, when I look back at that time, I don't know why I felt like I had to do it that way. But I think the best thing I eventually did was create an outline for myself of all the topics I wanted to touch on. And I wish that I had started writing in chunks on each thing I wanted to hit. And then later piece together what I had written on each topic. I think if I had let myself write in any order I wanted to, I think that I would have had a much easier time writing, filling in the areas that hold it all together. And it's really hard to pull things together when you don't really know where your paper's leading to. And so I think, getting the like meat of it written out, make the conclusion, and then go back to the beginning and tie it all together in the beginning. Also, because you're doing your intro and conclusion. So anyways, I just think that I really wish I had let myself write in whatever order I wanted to, and pick a topic that day that really I was like, okay, like this is, my brain can think about this topic today, versus forcing myself to, you know, write a paper the way I thought I had to write it. I think that we get stuck in the, you know, what we learned in high school, what we learned in college, and like the structure of a paper. And so, you know, that was really stuck in my mind. And I think as a master's student, you know, no one is looking over your shoulder to see how you're doing things and how you're putting things together. And I think letting yourself, you know, work on it the way you want and the way your brain works, you know, not everyone's thought process is the same. And I wish that I had broken my paper out into sections just so that it felt easier to me. And I think it would have helped with time management as well. I think if I had been able to break it down for myself even more and made things a lot smaller feeling, I think my time management also, I think I would have been better at that, because I also struggled with time management.
I think out of everything with capstone, the one thing that always comes back to my mind, like looking back now, having gone through it, was I wish that I had, with my time management, with my practicing and everything, was that I had given myself a little bit more of a break, or like a day off more than like once throughout the whole thing. I was so nervous that I wouldn't pass, it wouldn't be good, all of that I was up till like 2 a.m. most nights reading through it and everything. So when we finished school, I think after I did a research and innovation showcase that Magali and the program hosted with New England Tech, once that was all cleared and done, I think I slept for almost 24 hours. So I wish that I had given myself that leeway and that break at some point, just like instead of like the one day I took to visit family, just to give myself a break, know that, yeah, I can do the work. It's going to be great no matter what, because I'm putting in the effort. And that way also, like, I wouldn't have felt so overwhelmed at times and so stressed and so worried and anxious, especially because with the practicing, it was 2021. There was a chance, because Jen and I presented at the same time, there was a chance that we were going to be in person or Zoom, and it was leaning towards in person. So I practiced on Zoom and like in person in the outfit that I'd be wearing, but then we had to roll with the punches and go to Zoom. So I was a bit over prepared, I felt. So it was kind of, I feel like prepare, definitely prepare. I'm with Jen and Kat on prepare, practice, make the note cards, practice in front of people, different people, especially. I think that was really helpful. But also don't be learn from me, don't be extremely hard on yourself to where you're exhausted and not feeling great afterwards, or just straight up, I'm going to sleep for a day, because it will work out, it'll be okay. And if it's not, you go back to the board with Magali and you figure things out. And that's the one thing. It's just that I was a little bit easier on myself and took breaks for once.
This is great insight. I know that the students are going to be very grateful that they are going to be able to hear all of your comments, guys. Thank you. Let me touch upon a couple of things that that came to mind because of your responses. One is the time management. I feel like throughout the program, probably now I realize that the biggest challenge for students is the time management, the availability, because they work full time and they are doing either, even if they are doing only one course per term, that is still a lot of time. So, you know, and some people, a couple of students have said, you know, I wish I had more time because I could have done a better job in the courses and in the papers and stuff. So what do you have as recommendations for other students related to time management and also related to the program, because that is the one thing that I kind of struggle with, and I am not sure how to handle it, because I feel like, I am extremely repetitive when I say, if you have any questions, reach out, let me know, email me, do you want to meet? Do you want to this? Do you want that? And then people are like, no, no questions. And I'm like, okay, all right, fine. So that's okay. And maybe it's a time factor in it. So what are your thoughts on that? What do you recommend for the students? And if you have any suggestions for the program as well?
Oh my goodness. I know that for me, something that was really helpful for both general homework assignments and for the capstone and portfolio was to try to, like, when assignments would come out, or as soon as you know what your topic's going to be for capstone and portfolio, kind of read through right away, right? I would read through the homework, and then if I had to go to work for the day, I would kind of just like think about and put notes in my phone about like ideas of how to respond. Because when you get done with work for the day, you don't want to do homework, and you have to do homework. And you want time to unwind and have time to yourself. But and sometimes I would start writing my paper, when I had downtime or had a break, like had my break at work. I would just kind of email myself answers to what my homework assignments were going to be, or I would, send myself research articles for my capstone to look over later, just kind of like accepting and like harnessing that assignment, or that topic, and just kind of making it part of your everyday thinking. And just like we had talked about, like these things have to be things that you are interested in. Your end capstone project has to be something that you're passionate about. And for me, like the homework assignments, I was able to incorporate a lot of those assignments to what my end goal was going to be. So, if they ask questions about what you think about things, I would use my interests as an example to justify my answers, and it made it more interesting. So for me, I was just trying to, just read through it, email yourself what the homework assignment topic is or something, and then look back throughout the day and kind of like give yourself notes and add to it, or get it done right away if you have time. If when you have time, get it done first thing, and think about it later if you need to add to it, or email somebody or your teacher things that you wish you could have added to it, because it's going to affect you at the end. So just stressing about it and pushing it off till unreasonable hours and trying to avoid doing it is not going to be helpful, because you're going to need that for your presentation at the end. So trying to just have a positive mindset about it and accepting it and making it something you love makes the whole thing way more enjoyable than fighting it and trying to avoid doing it. So just try to make it things that you love and are passionate about. And you're going to learn new things that you've never learned about, and you might not even be passionate about, but it's still a learning process. So it is a challenge, but you can make it fun and doable.
I think for me, excuse me, I am not someone who is able to put in an hour of work and step away, and then come back to it the next day. I am not good at that. I don't think that my best work comes out that way. And I think I knew that about myself at the time, which was helpful, because I would not work on, big projects after work. I would save bigger projects or bigger writing prompts for the weekend, because I knew that that was where my time was, my available time. When I sit down to write something, I am really good at writing it all down in one setting and then going back and editing and, tweaking later. And because I knew that about myself, I would save my papers for either like the Sunday or the Saturday, depending on, you know, how the due dates landed. And I always was looking at the week ahead. I was always looking at, you know, what was upcoming. You know, if I could do some of the smaller assignments like ahead of time, so I didn't even have to think about them, and I could focus on like some of the bigger projects, I would do that. I think knowing yourself, which is hard, it's very hard to be self-aware, especially when you have so much going on. But I think just knowing how your brain works and knowing what is going to work best for you. I knew that sitting down for 5 hours and banging out a paper was how I needed to do it. And so I would, you know, sit down in the morning. I would spend 5 hours writing, and you know, I'd go back over it maybe the next day, give myself a break. And so that is kind of how I handled it. I know not everyone works that way, but I know that I can't go from a full work day, especially, I mean, I was working like 10 to 12-hour days at this time because of COVID. So I probably should have said that ahead of time, but you know, I didn't want to go from work to my schoolwork. It was not, I just wasn't able to do it mentally, physically. You know, I think mental health is also a huge part of this. I think, you know, I think stress and anxiety and all of that plays a huge part in the program as well. I think really keeping your mental health in check, or just keeping an eye on it, is good. I think it's very easy to kind of, and I think Lauren, you kind of touched on this, like it is so easy to like be hard on yourself and kind of go into a downward spiral. And I think giving yourself the grace and like knowing it's okay to maybe wait until the weekend to do your work, or do an hour, or like Kat said, like send yourself notes. I think it's okay to like do those things and prep yourself kind of along the way. And then, you know, if you're feeling good, like then sit down and do it. And if you're having a bad day, maybe hold off and do it the next day. It's not always, that's easier said than done, because you know, if you waited until Saturday and your papers due Sunday, or you know, but those are the things to think about. I think is, you know, if you know you're stressed, you know, maybe anxiety is higher right now for you, take that into consideration and do yourself a favor, and just push through it and like start it. I think starting the homework assignment is also hard, because sometimes it feels overwhelming. So I said a lot in this, but I think overall being aware of what is going on in your life, what's going on with you mentally and physically, and then allowing using that to shape how you do your work. So that's my wrap up for everything.
With time management, I definitely am someone that will make a schedule for herself and like kind of can visualize the time in the day and what I have free, what I don't. So I have that like pre-built in, I guess we could say. But when I was working in Connecticut, it was like a 50+ hour week, plus anywhere from a 30 to 60-minute commute one way. So my time was limited. So what I would do is like what Kat would do. I would take notes. I would bring my textbooks, or try to figure out a way to get like the research articles or stuff I could read like on my phone with me at work, or a printed out copy to like read and revise. So that way when I went home, all I'd have to do is just log on, make my edits, and I could submit. And then there was the Canva app, which I loved, because you could literally take your phone and be like, okay, it's my lunch break. I'm going to do my little like weekly discussion board thing right here, or I'm going to read through what someone wrote and be prepared for when I go home to read again, and then kind of have an idea of how I want to respond. And then Magali will probably remember this, but when I started, I was in a very weird transitional period with work. and there was a lot going on. So every 2 weeks, I gave myself like one day where I didn't do anything for schoolwork. I didn't do anything for work. And I literally went and got tattooed every Saturday or Sunday and had the day before or the day following to start the next week's work, or like to get it. But it also gave me a break in time for myself to be like, okay, this is my time, nothing else. And that was that. And it helped. And I still do it now with my current job. When it gets to be too much, I'm like, okay, this is my day. That is that. The end. Nothing. And there is one thing that I know from other people, like I with Jen on the thing of like, if it is too much and it is too stressful or something, be aware of that. But if you've done your part to where you've reached out to Magali or your professor and it's still like you're still not feeling good, they're there to support you, and there is the option of going part-time. I don't know what Jen and Kat did. I was full-time the whole time, like working 40-hour weeks or more. So it was just like, okay, I have my time plotted out. But from other friends and people that were in the program, like they drop down to part-time, and that's okay if you do that and then you bump back up or you stay at part-time. Like it's figuring out there's different options. Like from some people, they said, oh no, it's really nice to go part-time because it feels more manageable, it's more in tune with what I have going on. If you're crazy like me and are just like, go full speed all the way, I want to be done fast, I want to do good work and be done fast, that's an option too. So I think knowing the options and like knowing that Magali wants you to succeed, the professors want you to succeed, they're not out to get you. I think that's one of the biggest things. They're not against you. They want you to not only learn what they're teaching, but they want you to be able to apply that in the future and be successful. Magali is always there. I was like, oh, do you need a reference for a job? I'd be happy to. Or do you have questions? I'd be happy to answer those. Like all of the professors have been like that. So knowing that they're there to support you, they're there to encourage you and help you, that's a big thing. Because I've had emails with Magali, I had ones with other professors of like, hi, this is what's going on in my life right now. This might be late for like this assignment. This is why. I will have it on time or do my best to. They understand that. Like we had a tropical storm one year that knocked out power for part of the state, and I was in this part of the state where we lost it. They understood and we did our best. So that's kind of my thought, is just take time for yourself when you can and just know that they're there to support you, and there's more options than just going full time and working yourself up into a frenzy basically.
Can I just add one thing to what Lauren said? I started full time. So I'd like to share how it went for me, because I started full time. I did a year of full time, and then I believe COVID happened or started. And I tried staying full time. And I don't know why I did that to myself. I believe I ended up dropping out for a quarter because it was so overwhelming, and I just didn't know how to do the program anymore. Almost like I really was like, I don't know how to do this with my job, my full-time job. I'm working at before, when I had first started the program, I was only working 40 hours a week. I didn't have to work overtime because it just wasn't required. And I took a full break. I think I took a full quarter. And when I came back part-time. And it was the best decision I made for myself, was to extend my time with New England Tech and allowing myself, I made air and breath for myself, like in my world, like, and it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I expected to do. I thought I was going to go in full throttle, finish in 2 years and call it a day. And it wasn't healthy for me to do that. And I'm really glad that I made the decision. I wish I had made it sooner so that I didn't have to take a full quarter off. I had to do that for my health though. And I think coming back and making the decision to come back part-time was really beneficial for me. And I think that I was more successful because I did it.
Great. I mean, all of this is going to be very, very good for the current students who watch the video. So I am happy that you are sharing that. I think that we are getting towards the end. So another thing that came up in your conversation is the presentation skills. We really, make sure that the students make the best presentation and the best capstone paper, because I mean, I thought that is like the very first official work that you are doing as a public health professional, and that's why we push you to do that and to practice it and to rehearse it and to time it and all of that. Do you think that, though all of that practice and everything, have you maintained that? Do you feel like that the presentation skills were better as a result of we pushing you hard on that part?
Yeah, I think so. I think, that capstone has been an example of a writing sample I've used to present for jobs as well. And it's kind of just something, especially for me, to show me what I've been capable of. Like knowing that I can do that has kind of built like a kind of confidence, and it was very stressful, but it shows that it's possible, and it has been helpful because I was able to put everything that I like I have said multiple times in this, everything that I was interested in, and making a story about it and putting it together and presenting what I'm passionate about has just been something really cool. It's just like my masterpiece. So yeah, I think it's been helpful, and being pushed to that limit, like I said, was stressful, but also essential in a way. So we need to see what we are capable of, because this is a master's program, but we are responsible for our own mental health, and we do need to learn how to time manage and put ourselves first and make time. And if that means taking time off or taking a break or making sure we have a day to do nothing, like it's okay to do that, and you are responsible for making sure that happens, because no one else is going to take care of you in that way. Like you have to make that time. So push yourself as hard as you can, but also like give yourself time to play and relax and sleep if you need to take 24 hours to sleep after doing that, or before that, whatever you need to do. But push yourself hard, but rest hard, I guess I would say.
All right, Magali, can you repeat the first part of your question?
It was about the preparation and the rehearsing and all of that, the presentation. That stick now, to later, now that you are professionally. I mean, was that helpful to you? Did you improve your presentation skills as a result of that?
Perfect, thank you. Yes, definitely. I think the short answer is yes. I think one of the biggest things I learned, and I definitely have taken with me, is, and Magali, you were a huge part of this when I was writing my capstone. I had this I had this idea of a research paper in my mind. It's all, writing, it's all this, but I think one thing that Magali, you made me think about is like, what is the best way to deliver information? What is the best way to engage people? And I think, so when I was writing my paper, one thing I did was, and I never had thought about, which is just crazy, but I added tables and charts, and I made the information readable and enjoyable to, I mean, this is a long paper that people are looking at. And so I think, learning to organize the information and the research that you've done in a way that is easy to read for the viewer or the audience. I think keeping in mind, what the audience is going to be looking at reading, depending on the situation. And I think bringing that through, to future papers, future presentations, like using different ways to organize information is really important. And I think even Kat said, like, she did minimal words on her slides. I think that is a huge thing in terms of keeping engagement. But if you do need to put a lot of information because, say it's data, say it's, I don't know, you just need like a lot of points on the slide because you need it visible for everyone to see. I think learning how to organize it best, and if that means putting it in a table and like putting headers and mapping it out for people, I think, putting words or talking about it isn't always the best way. I think helping people follow along with what you're talking about is also important. So yeah, that's what I'll say. I think bringing that with me into the future and thinking about the audience and what I want them to get out of my presentation. I think learning about like the different ways to do that, I think was really helpful. And I also think, I don't do as much preparation in terms of like practicing out loud with my work presentations, but I write myself a script. I prepare myself. It's easy because I'm behind the computer screen. I can write a script and I can kind of put it in my PowerPoint notes. But that like has changed my life in terms of like making sure I know what I'm going to say, especially if I'm behind a computer screen or a camera. Like no one can see my notes. And I think taking advantage of that is really good. I think if it makes you more comfortable and, no one really knows it's happening because it's behind the scenes, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. No one needs to know you're looking at notes. No one needs to know that, something took you like 2 hours to create just so they could see it in a certain way. Like, so I think, always keeping in mind your audience and thinking about how you want to portray your information. I think that is one of the biggest things I took with me from the program.
I definitely think the public speaking and the presentation skills stuck. I had that drilled into my head since I was like in middle school with where I went to school, because they made a big emphasis on that, and we had to do a senior project on like a much smaller scale in comparison to the capstone, but similar. So I had it in, but I'm not a public speaker. I don't like talking. I don't like presenting. I'm much happier running my data and just like letting it speak for itself in like a paper or something, or like another format. But I know I can do it, and knowing like the practicing, like I'm like Kat, if I can memorize a slide or I know exactly what's on that slide, I'll just make minimal notes on a note card. If it's something I can't get in like a couple of run throughs, I'll add more information to like a note card. And then like, because I will get my words twisted, I will do like little weird vocal practices like beforehand, just to make sure I'm not going to stumble over my words and look less professional or prepared. But it's also because I have to present now. Like Thursday, I had a presentation for a local advisory council with the Department of Behavioral Health, Hospitals, and Developmental Disabilities, like BUDA is what it's abbreviated to. I had to present what grant close on a federal grant looks like to not only BUDA, who's aware of it also, but to our community partners, to people that tune in from, federally qualified health centers, from the Department of Health in different areas that have been partners. And I was confident and able to be like, all right, if I can get through the capstone presentation that allowed me to get to where I am, I can do this, I can handle this. I definitely think that the presentation skills pay off. The one thing I would recommend is also like instilling and practicing in front of people, because although the program is virtual and a lot of things are still running semi-virtually, in person is different and things are starting to shift back that way. So that would just be like my one thing, is like also to practice in front of people. be aware of like when you're speaking in like in person, how body language comes across and how volume, because I'm soft spoken. So I always have to almost shout for people to hear me, or I have to repeat myself. So that's my one thing, is just remind people about in-person presentation skills too, because it's probably going to be back sooner than we think. And I've had to give in-person presentations, and it's an adjustment back to it, but once you do have it back, it's positive to have.
I can thank you enough for your time and for your ideas and your feedback. You know that I believe in quality improvement, and I am constantly thinking about how we can make the program better. Luckily, we have pretty much revised all of the courses. I think that only one has not been revised from the beginning that I can think of. All of the other courses have been, revised, merged, grown, changed a little bit here and there. So the program is, much improved, and we expect that that will continue to happen over time. And all of that happens because of the collaboration and the ideas from the students and graduates like you guys. So I really appreciate it. So on behalf of the New England Tech and the students and the faculty and everybody, I really thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I think that there's a couple of conclusions that I can tell my students now. So listen to these bright people, how, the experiences and all of the good words, the good advice that they have. Consider that even if in unique circumstances, we are there to support you, because we never know what's going to happen, but we figure out a way to do it. And we work hard to get you the best preceptors, the best experience possible. So reach out if you need us. Know yourself and know yourself. What are your habits? What do you want to do? How you write better, and stay in touch. Give yourself a break. I think that those are the messages briefly. So, any last words before we end?
You got this.
You're way more capable than your self-doubt will ever think. And if you get that in your head, toss it out. That's garbage. You don't need that.
Yes.
You got this.
Give yourself permission to rest, to change the way you thought you were going to do things. And I would just say be flexible and try and roll with it as best you can. We can't control what's happening in the world. We can't control what's happening in our life. And I think just, trying to be aware of that and be nice to yourself too, because it's really big too.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day, and then we will stay in touch.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.